time now for you to hear from Sacha Lord, promoter, advisor to Greater Manchester's Mayor Andy Burnham and best-selling author. Sacha's book, Tales from the Dance Floor, hit number 2 in the Sunday Times bestseller list on publication. And Sacha, I enjoyed reading the dedication to your mum at the start of it, which says, I still haven't got a proper job.
It's true.
But this seems to be working out okay.
It has done.
What would the proper job have been?
Do you know what? I don't know because, well, you know from reading the book, I went to a very, very good school. I went to Manchester Grammar, but I left with 2 U's and an E. Yeah. Didn't go to university, didn't go to any further education. My first job was in a clothes shop, actually, in Altrincham, Goose Green in Altrincham, which is the original flannels. I used to get £20 a day. I actually did. My first business venture was a market stall in Liverpool.
Stanley Market.
Stanley Market, selling leather jackets every Sunday.
Yeah.
And this is not a dig at Scousers, because I know you're a Scouser. But to this day, I don't know how they used to do this, but my leather jackets were pinned up and it had a metal chain going through one arm into the other, so they were all connected. And I still get one nicked every Sunday. And I've no idea how they do. It's like Houdini.
Scousers, ingenuous to the end.
Yes.
But if you weren't sure what the proper job would have been, did you ever think those years ago that you would be the top of the bestseller lists?
No. And actually, I was second, which is really, really annoying. The book that beat me was about a dead dog called Max.
Right.
And it was a record high week of sales. So any other week that's been looking at since, I would have been number 1. So that really, it burns on me, that second. Number 1 would have been better.
You're going to have to do another one.
Well, maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, let's come back to why you wrote that a bit later. But rewind again. And in the book, you talk quite a lot about your parents. And the relationship with your dad clearly was troubled.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
He was, if you had to write a list of things that you didn't want your dad to be, he pretty much ticked all of those. So he was an alcoholic, he was a gambler, he was a womanizer. And I just remember growing up, he was never really home. He'd probably come in at 10 o'clock or something. Myself and my brother would be in bed at that point, never around, always screaming at my mum. It was never physical abuse, but I think mental abuse is worse, or on a par. It was just very, very unpleasant to be around someone like that. Yeah, not very many good traits at all.
And clearly that had an effect on you as a youngster. Do you think it impacted upon your career in any way?
Undoubtedly. So everything that he did, I tried to do the opposite.
Right.
And there have been moments in my life when I've actually thought, when I've been stuck, and I've had to think, well, what would my dad do? And when I worked that out, I've done the opposite.
It's exactly the opposite, right.
He used to be a member of Men Only Club. He was a Freemason. And I tell this story in the book. Yeah. He had this brown leather briefcase, a box briefcase. And my brother and I were told, do not go into that briefcase. Under no circumstances do you go in there. Anyway, when you're told that as a kid, what's the first thing you do? You want to go and have a look. My mum had gone out, so we looked in there. It was full of all these really weird Masonic aprons and things. But we found these 2 little packets. And we folded it all back up again, but kept these 2 packets out. And when my mum came back, we took them to her and said, oh, what are these here? And I remember clear as day, she was stood in the kitchen, and there were 2 packets of condoms.
Right.
Not another great day in the household. Waiting for him to come back. But not. I always tried to be very opposite what he was. Right.
No, I understand that. Your mum, on the other hand, you speak lovingly of, until you sacked her. Do you want to tell us that tale?
Well, I would have, I sacked her and I'd do the same thing again. So it was first year at Parklife 2010. And it was in Plattfields, which was right on the edge of Moss Side. The police were very, very concerned because we were going to have a large amount of cash on site. 20,000 people, all probably spending 25 quid each, all cash in those days, 2010. So they were already extremely concerned, and when the cash was taken off site by G4S, a helicopter used to follow it with armed police behind them. And I'm not on Facebook, and one of the crew came up to me and said, "Have you seen what your mum's put on Facebook?" I was like, "No, let me have a look." And obviously first year I wanted people I could really trust working in the cash office. So I had my mum in the cash office. The cash would come in off the tills, it would get counted by hand, then it would go into a machine, counted, and the next person would put one of those little cardboard foils onto it, and then it would go in a big container at the end where my mum would recount it, and then G4S security would take it away.
Yeah.
I have no idea why she did this, but she decided to take her shoes off, put her feet in the box of cash, take a picture of it, put it on Facebook, said, "Warming my feet in Sacha's cash." Obviously, I had to sack her. She's not happy that that's in the book either.
I bet she's not. And she didn't get a job back.
Do you know what? She actually did second year, but she became quite bored of it and left. I took her off the cash, gave her something different.
Right, okay.
That makes me wonder, Sacha, about, you've been very open in your book about your family. How did your mum and other people take it? Was that something that you had to speak with her in advance about? Were you worried about doing that?
I was slightly concerned, but I think on the whole she enjoyed it. You know, she said she did. So she read it 2 weeks before anybody else did. My mum and wife, actually. And my mum was like, "Why did you never tell me you were shot at? Or why did you never tell me there was a petrol bomb against you?" I'm like, "Oh, really? So you thought when I was 23 and you phoned me up and went, 'How was work last night?' Oh, yeah, it was fine. I was shot at. You thought I was going to say that?" I wouldn't exactly be working in this industry anymore, would I? So there were a few things in there that raised an eyebrow, but it was years ago, so she's fine with that.
Yeah.
And she still doesn't think you've got a proper job.
Still doesn't think it was a proper job.
You mentioned being shot at.
Yeah.
You mentioned the petrol bomb attack. You also talk about the Quality Street gang and the Brown Bull crew and others. Would it be fair to say it was a bit of a dodgy time to be working in the sector?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, when I was in the sixth form, which is probably the reason why I failed all my A-levels, we were known as Manchester. So Stone Roses, Happy Mondays, New Order, James, Factory Records, and the Hacienda that I became obsessed with. That was Manchester, and the world were looking very much like they are now, actually. The world were looking at what we were doing back then. With the explosion of Acid House and the Hacienda came the explosion of ecstasy as well at exactly the same time. And the gangs were just fighting each other for control of the doors, because when you had the doors, when you controlled the doors, you controlled what happened inside. And it was rough times. It was really rough. When I opened Sankey's in Ancoats in 2000, I mean, you've seen Ancoats now. It's incredible. It's beautiful. Cutting room squares, a Michelin-star restaurant. When I had it, there was no street lighting. Taxis wouldn't drop customers off down there. There were syringes on the floor. You had kids cycling around on BMXs wearing balaclavas. It was horrible. And to see it now, it's fantastic.
Oh. It never persuaded you to give up? Being on the edge of criminality day in, day out?
Well, I wasn't on...
No,
that was there, faced with it.
Yeah.
I had no other option. I was a good promoter, and it was the only thing I was good at. I couldn't, like other promoters who had had enough and they went back because they did qualify as an accountant at university or something like that. I didn't have that luxury, so I had to stick with it.
Right. No, I understand that. You mentioned the Hacienda a number of times there. There was an awakening, wasn't there, that first night you walked into the Hacienda that you talked about?
Well, the first time I tried to get in, I actually didn't get in.
You failed, yes.
And we did agree not to use the F-bomb on this, but the security did tell me to F off, because I'd heard all the cool kids at school talking about the Hacienda. And I'd been going to all those like chrome carpeted nightclubs like 21 Piccadilly and Discotheque Royale where you had to dress up. So I presumed Hacienda's a different level of dressing up. So I just went into my dad's wardrobe and I took his shirt, his tie, his suit, queued for an hour and a half, not really paying much attention on what the other guys are wearing and girls are wearing in the queue. Got to the front and the security were like, "Do one," because it was just jeans and t-shirts.
Yeah.
But the second time I walked in there, wow. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it now. It didn't matter because Manchester was pretty depressing, pretty grey in those days. This was pre-redesign, pre the IRA bomb. So, yeah, there weren't many things to cheer about. And then you walk into somewhere where you can leave your worries on the outside. We used to call it the chapel, the church, and it didn't matter whether you were a student, whether you were unemployed, whether you were a postman, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a doctor, dentist, accountant, lawyer, you were all there to praise the DJ. And that DJ that night was Mike Pickering, who went on to form M People.
Yeah. And the rest then becomes history, doesn't it?
It does.
For you, indeed.
Yes.
Well, let's talk then about the 3 a.m. conversations, because the purpose of these conversations is really to try and get under the skin of what you're thinking about in those dark hours that trouble you. And you helpfully gave us 3 scenarios to talk about, although you didn't exactly give us too much background on each.
Okay.
So the first suggestion you made, which fascinated me, was you don't really have to go to university. So why did that cause you angst?
I don't like the idea of university. It serves a purpose for some people, but not for everyone. And I think it's ridiculous that at the age of, is it 13, you're asked to work out your GCSEs. And then at the age of 15, I think it is, you're told to work out your A-levels. It kind of puts you on the course to what university and what career you want. It's, to sit 3 exams and that defines the rest of your life, to me, is completely and utterly absurd. I just find it so wrong, so backward thinking. And, it's not in every sector. I couldn't have left school and become a doctor. I couldn't have left school and become an accountant. But if you'd said to me when I was measuring the inside trousers of people in Goose Green, well, you're going to go on to co-found biggest nightclub in the world, warehouse budget, biggest metropolitan festival in the UK, Parklife. You're going to be advisor to the Mayor of Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester. You're going to have a Sunday Times best-selling book. That is absolutely impossible. But it just shows that in my sector, in events, hospitality, there's no barrier. You can just go on to achieve whatever set your mind is. And by the way, I never set out to achieve all those things. It just happened organically. Yeah. And when I think back, I sat the 11 plus to go to Altrincham Grammar. I sat Manchester Grammar, William Hume, North Sestron, Cheadle Hume, Stockport Grammar. Passed all of them. But the pressure from my mum and dad for me to get into Manchester Grammar was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And they, not through any malice, they wanted me to have the best education possible, which was Manchester Grammar. But I am not intelligent enough to go to Manchester Grammar. I got taught how to pass the exam. And one of the main things you have to write, you're given 5 topics, write about one of these topics, an essay. And one of them was a walk in the woods. You don't know what's going to come up in advance, but I learned off by heart 100 colourful phrases from a tutor. So at the age of 11, I had phrases in my head like the sun's vast vermilion orb, the moon's incandescent pearl, the tranquil translucent water. I mean, it's bonkers.
Yeah.
And I just threw all these phrases in there and sailed through the exam.
Yeah.
I realised on day 1, I was not even in their league. So maybe it turned me into a promoter, because to be a promoter, you have to be a bit of a blagger. And for 7 years, I blagged my way through it. My brother didn't make it. He got kicked out after the 5th year.
Right.
But I blagged it to the end.
I think that generation of teaching, actually, your experience there in Manchester Grammar mirrors very much what I, thinking back, encountered at St Edward's in Liverpool.
Yeah.
We were taught to pass exams.
Yes.
We were taught to pass the 11 plus. We were taught to get O levels. We were taught to get A levels. We were taught, and we were expected to go to university.
Yeah.
Did you get grief for not wanting to go to university?
I think the school didn't give up. Didn't give up on me, but they put me to the back of the queue.
Right.
But I had one teacher in there that I speak very, very highly of in the book.
This was the art teacher.
Teacher, Mr. McGuinness, who was phenomenal. I always say that there's 2 people who have really made me see life through a different lens. He was one of them. And he pulled me to one side. He knew I had a really bad family background. They were getting divorced at this stage, my mum and dad. And he's like, why are you dressing up like everybody else? Why are you conforming like everybody else? Yeah. Everybody else is walking around like a penguin. Why have you got a box briefcase with 2 gold combination locks on it? You know, if I've seen the way you paint, you like expressing yourself. Why don't you express yourself on the outside?
Yeah.
And he gave me a tape for a band called the Man from Del Monte, which I went to see. And he told me to go to Hacienda. It was him that said, do it.
Yeah. Did you get grief from your parents about not wanting to go to university? Was that did that trouble you at the time?
Not really. I think they knew.
Yeah.
I think they probably felt that they'd wasted money on my education. I think they were disappointed in me, to be honest.
Did that trouble you, though? Did that keep you awake at night?
That part didn't trouble me, but what troubled me was, what am I going to do?
Right, okay.
Because I don't want to be working in a clothes shop for £20 a day for the rest of my life. You know, there's things I want to do in my life.
Could you articulate what they were at that stage?
No, I just knew that I wanted to be able to have nice holidays, or go for a meal without worrying. You know, I've got to go for the cheapest main course on here because I can't afford. You know, those kind of things. Yeah. I just wanted to get into a comfortable position.
So you could vision the lifestyle, but how you were going to achieve it,
correct,
was lacking.
Yeah,
you pushed down that academic route, and you acknowledged the ways that helped you. You know, in terms of being able to blag your way through things, but do you feel that it caused damage? Because I know in your book you're very open about the fact that you've suffered some imposter syndrome, which
still do.
Yeah, and do you think that originates from those days of feeling I shouldn't be here? I'm not good enough.
Do you know what? Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you know, I find it weird now because the school never. I remember the Leavers book, and all the names in the back. Like literally everyone was Joe Bloggs, Oxford, William Smith, Cambridge, St Andrews, all the mega universities, and then there's my name. There's just a blank next to it. They weren't going to put flannels, were they? So
they've got a few things to put now, though.
Well, they have, and
you've got your photograph up now, haven't you?
Next to Ben Kingsley, who played Gandhi.
Wow.
Who won an Oscar for it. And it's like, wow, that is just phenomenal. And one of the things at school that I was really upset about, I don't know why, but I wanted to become a prefect in the sixth form. I was desperate to be a prefect. I quite liked the badge. I thought it was quite cool, to be honest. It's like a little silver owl. So when they asked me a few years later to go back to the school and give a talk to all the kids, I was originally going to say no. And I thought, well, hang on, here's my opportunity. So I got back in contact with the school and I said, okay, I'll do it if, before I give the talk on stage, the High Master comes out and he makes me prefect and he gives me the prefect badge and the prefect tie, then I'll do it. And he did. And I've still got it in my office at home.
Brilliant. Let's move on to your second 3am conversation. And again, you left me sadly lacking in clues because all you said was Manchester's nightlife.
Yes.
So why would that be a source of angst, a source of lying awake at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, if you were home, indeed, if you're in the nightlife sector?
Well, depending on what time of year you get me, if it's September to New Year's Eve, Friday or Saturday at 3am, I'd be thinking another 2 hours and I can go home.
Right, of course.
But Greater Manchester's nightlife, why do I think about it a lot, is because we're having such a huge moment at the moment. Sunday Times have called us UK's capital of nightlife. You've seen it yourself how busy the places are. They're not necessarily making money because all the overheads that are coming with us at the moment, the increased overheads. But town is bouncing. I cannot remember another time which has been this busy. But we can't rest on our laurels.
What could Manchester do better then, if it's keeping you awake at night still?
I do worry. I really like the landscape. I wasn't sold on the shiny, high-rise tower blocks to begin with, but now I get it. Now, like the juxtaposition. Yeah. But we must never ever lose that grittiness of Manchester. To me, that industrial. I like the industrial dirt. And we should always respect that, acknowledge it. I don't want us to become one of those soulless corporate city centres.
I got a sense, actually, when reading your book, that if anything, it was a bit of a love letter to Manchester. Does that explain the work that you've done with Andy Burnham? You know, was that a conscious choice of wanting to contribute something back to the city?
That was my way of giving back.
Yeah.
So the city have allowed me to do what I wanted to do and allowed me to succeed. And now I have to give back. I'm at that point in life where it's all about giving back, which is why I set the foundation up. So I want to give kids who are in my position at school, who are anxious, don't know what they're going to do, give them the opportunity to do what I've done. So I'm in that process now of giving back and thanking people.
So is there a particular scenario at 3 a.m. in the morning where you've had a real concern in terms of Manchester's nightlife?
I'll give you two examples of my own personal concern to do with nightlife. The first one was October 2000 when I opened Sankey's. Sankey's had been open before 94 to 98. It shut because, well, it went bust, but it had gang problems, shootings, drug issues, all sorts. The police wanted it shut. And the old door firm that had it was a Salford door firm. So when they heard that I was reopening it again, they insisted they did the door. And I was like, I'd been told by the police the old door firm cannot, under any circumstances, do it. We weren't allowed to open. So I took a call the night before we were due to open. It must have been like 2 a.m. or something, from the fire officer to say, you need to come down to the club. The club's on fire. I was like, this is all we need. We'd sold all the tickets. We'd sold 800 tickets, sold out. We had Sonique doing the opening night. Do you remember Sonique?
Yeah.
I forget her track actually, but she sang it on the microphone. Do you know it?
I can visualise her doing
Go on,
it.
sing
Yeah. Do you don't want to hear my voice?
So anyway, I turned up, and in the car park at the back, we had a substation that was protected by a steel fence. And the old door firm had climbed over, put a bed mattress entwined in the fence, poured petrol all over it, set it alight, and obviously it blew up the substation. What they didn't realise was, because Sankey's was in one of the original industrial mills, we had our own generator inside that we ran off. So actually that weekend, we were raving on the Friday and Saturday, and the rest of Ancoats was in pitch black. So that was a scary moment.
And did you not think at times like this, why am I doing this? I need to go and do something else
on
that's
that
safer.
occasion, I actually couldn't stop laughing because I was that exhausted. I'd literally worked 3 days solid with hardly any sleep at all. The idea was to try and get some sleep before the opening night. We'd been painting the club and all. On the opening night, actually, some people left with green paint on the back of them because it was still, touch and go whether they were going to open or not. But no, it didn't faze me at all.
You weren't worried about your own personal safety with those guys?
It's in the book. So for the first few months, I did have a bodyguard who was security. He used to pick me up from home, drop me off late at night as well, because obviously you don't want to be followed. And so, yeah, I had to be very careful. The other incident that kept me up at 3 a.m. for quite a few nights was the first year at Store Street. So we'd run, this was an ex-air raid shelter, and we'd run 3 events at Easter, and we'd sold 1,800 tickets. And there was no issues with that at all, fully licensed, we'd all signed it off, above board. Anyway, when we announced that we wanted to do September through to New Year's Eve, a new fire officer came down. This was 4 nights before the opening night. We were live on Radio 1 with Pete Tong, completely sold out. All 1,800 tickets, and he turned around and said, no, you need a fire exit over there. I'm going to restrict you to 1,200. Now, we needed roughly about 1,500 to break even, so we would have lost our houses. And there's no way we could go through the wall he was pointing at, because it wasn't even owned by our landlord, it was owned by Network Rail. So I jumped in the car, went to meet the landlord. He's like, you can't go through that wall. And anyway, it's 6 foot thick. It's an air raid shelter. You're never going to get through that wall. It's like, okay, fine. And I got in my car and I was driving back over the Mancunian Way. And I was thinking to myself, this is it. This is the end of Wales Project. You only ever made a year. And not only that, we're about to lose our houses on this. And he phoned me up and he said, come back to see me. So I went back. He must have realised how worried I was. And he said, look, I'm not going to go to that car park for at least another week. So that's all I'm saying. And the penny didn't drop. I was like, so can we do what we want? I don't know what you're doing because I'm not going to go back there for another week. It's like, right, okay. So he'd kind of given us the green light to do it. But the second problem was, how are we going to go through a 6-foot thick wall with 4 days to go? And then get the fire officer back down to sign it off. And we managed to find this back street firm in Salford that had a diamond-tipped drill. And we did it at night time, so no one would see, until 5 a.m. Got through it, banged in the fire exit door. The fire officer couldn't believe it. His head fell off.
Wow.
But we managed to pull it off. That did keep me awake.
That feels like there's a lot of fly-by-your-seat kind of moments in your career.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a huge one.
How do you cope with flying by the seat of your pants regularly?
You get the adrenaline going through, so you don't think about it at the time you fight, but when you're through it and you look back, then it's like, how did we get through that? But yeah, that was one of the major moments.
Do you think there'll come a time where that adrenaline, that taste in the mouth, will just become too much?
I quite like a fight. I do. I quite like it.
Take that as a no then.
No, I can't see it anytime soon.
So in those moments where you are lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering how you do something, why something's going to happen, who do you talk to?
No one. Myself. I try to fathom it out myself, and I try to keep things, if I'm under pressure, I try to keep it away from Demi, my wife. It's not fair for her to feel my pressure. That's not right. Having said that, when she sees it, she's brilliant. But no, I try to fathom it out myself, the answer.
Yeah, in my experience, when the shit hits the fan, the textbook goes out the window.
Completely.
And it has to. But is there no one you would think of just picking the phone up to and saying, have you ever done this? How about that?
No, I have friends that I talk to try and lighten the moment, but never really try to bother other people with what's going on in my head, always. I'd love to be able to pick up the phone and go, I've got this issue, what would you do? But
do you do that for anybody else? Do people pick up the phone to you?
Yeah, a lot. And again, that's me giving back. I enjoy that. If I can help someone out, I will do it.
So the third and final conversation you highlighted, and again, no clues, thank you, was just simply the book.
Yeah.
So what was troubling about that? What was worrying?
I didn't want to upset people. And I just wanted it to be a proper warts and all. And I was worried that when the lawyers got their hands on it, the HarperCollins lawyers, they'd completely tear it to bits. And actually, weirdly, there's things in there that I was convinced they'd take out. And things that they did take out, I didn't see any problem with. I wanted to make sure my wife was happy with it. I wanted to make sure my mum was happy with it. I wanted certain people to get called out and thanked in there. The thank you section was the hardest, actually. I was so scared of missing someone who was absolutely key to me, missing them off. So I stared at that for quite a few days.
What was your process as a virgin author? How did you actually do it?
I had a co-author called Luke Bainbridge.
Right.
Luke was brilliant. Luke's a very well-respected author and journalist. In The Observer, he set up City Life in Manchester. He's written many books, one being Shaun Ryder's autobiography. And he did say to me in the first meeting that we had, I had a better memory than Shaun Ryder, which I didn't really take as much of a compliment.
Not the biggest compliment you've ever had?
It's not really. But he said to me that the first thing he said, look, okay, go away and bring out any old flyers you've got or photos. Now, I'm a bit of a hoarder. And I collected absolutely everything and catalogued it from 1994 up until present day. So I met him again and we had all the flyers on the table. We started talking about it, and that's how he started to extract the stories from me. And it was bizarre seeing, we had hours and hours and days and days and days of conversations. And then to see the conversations on paper, it's like, wow, that is special.
Excellent.
Is it quite cathartic?
It was very, very therapeutic, actually. Very therapeutic. There's stuff that I'd completely forgotten about. So it's nice to start talking about it again. But I'm proud of it. I'm really gutted it was a number 2. Gutted by that. You know, I'd love to have said it was a number 1 Sunday Times bestseller. But if you're in the top 10, you get it. So when you see the book now in the shops, it says on the front of it Sunday Times bestseller, which I'm kind of proud about that. But number 2 is not cool. If it was 7, that's better. Or even 6, 5.
Coming
that's
so
all right.
close. And
Coming so close, but not quite getting it. It's so annoying.
As we sit here today and you're looking back on those 3am conversations and all that went with them, is there one moment that really troubled you, and now that you're through it, you sit here thinking, how on earth did I get through that?
Yes, 2013, October 2013, we had a customer called Nick Bonney who came to Warehouse Project and was taken very poorly to hospital, and he didn't make it. And we knew immediately it was from drugs. And the national media pressure on his family at the time was phenomenal. They needed time to obviously grieve. How they went through that, I have no idea. The pressure I went through, my team went through. Someone had been to one of our events and was taken poorly and died. That was it. So if the event hadn't been on, there's a good chance he'd still be with us now, was my thought process at that time. And we started to talk it through. We nearly stopped the Warehouse Project at that point. We didn't, because we thought, well, people are not going to stop raving if we're not here. They're just going to go somewhere else. And actually our setup in terms of paramedics, doctors, police, sniffer dogs is far better than anybody else's. So we then went on an education route, and we're still doing it to this day now. We do back-of-house drug testing. And it's all about education, education, education. We have lost the war on drugs. You're never going to beat that. So it's now explaining to people, going out and taking them, what can actually happen. And if you are going to do it, then the safest way to do it. And people be watching this saying, well, you're condoning drugs. I'm not condoning drugs. What I'm saying is, if you can't stop drugs getting into a Category A prison like Strangeways prison, what am I supposed to do with a field like Parklife and other festival organisers? You can't stop them. It's going to happen. So you have to grab the bull by the horn and educate people. But that was a very, very intense, rocky fortnight. It was awful.
So you're a high-profile individual, certainly in this city, in the Northwest generally. And if I may say so, you're not frightened to speak in your mind.
No.
That inevitably will attract criticism, it will attract detractors, it will attract negativity from time to time. How do you deal with that?
Well, first, it's very easy just to close your laptop and not look at people's opinions on social media. It doesn't make any difference to me, to be honest. I've had it for years. I think when you do put your head above the parapet, people are always going to take pot shot at you. And we had it at Parklife about 3 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago. A couple I wasn't there at the time actually, but I heard about it. I was in event control. A couple got engaged on the main stage. I found out later they were called Indian Miles. They're from Scotland. They were 18-year-olds. And I got home on the Saturday night and I was reading the reviews in the Manchester Evening News, and there was the big article about this couple getting engaged before the main act went on. And I looked at the comments, and the comments were like, "You're fat, you're ugly, imagine getting engaged at Parklife." And I didn't sleep that night. I was thinking, these two kids are going to wake up the following morning all excited. They're in Manchester Evening News on one of the happiest days of their lives, and then see all these negative comments. So I phoned the Evening News straight away, and it's like, let's find who this couple are. And I got hold of them, and they were driving back actually to Scotland. They'd stayed in a hotel that night, driving back to Scotland. They'd only come for the Saturday, which annoyed me really. They should have bought a ticket for the weekend. Anyway, they went back, and they were really upset by it, especially Indy. She was really upset. So it's like, okay, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do so you can have the last laugh. I'm going to pay for your honeymoon. And when you're on that honeymoon, I want you to take a picture of the two of you, the cocktails, and just the V sign, because you've beaten the trolls. And it was so nice. The whole thing went viral. It was on ITN and everything. So yeah, they beat the trolls that night.
What's next? What's next for Sacha?
So the foundation,
Right.
that's the next big thing for me, which we're going to properly launch. And that is, my wife and I have set it up, Sacha Lord Foundation. It's got charitable status. And that's to help kids who were, as I said before, in the situation I was at school, really anxious, didn't know what they wanted to do. And if I can, with my black book, get them into events and hospitality, then that's what the foundation's going to do. I really enjoy working with, I'm the chair of Withenshaw Football Club as well. We've just had our second promotion on the trot, so I'm enjoying that. We were the first team to make the women's team semi-professional, so I'm proud about that. There's lots of good things that we're doing at the moment. I love talking and helping people in Greater Manchester, so yeah, we'll see where it goes, but I'm excited. I'm not slowing down.